Baruch Hashem. Today's daf yomi is Menachos daf lamed vav. Menachos, pretty sure. Let's see where we ended yesterday. So let's start on the bottom of lamed hey amud beis. It says the Gemara. Let's start 7 lines from the bottom on lamed hey amud beis. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Bidri. Amar Rav Acha. Aricha, Amar Rav Huna, V'Amarle, Amar Rav Menachos, Amar Shmuel, Tefillin Me'im Asem Mevarchaleim. At what point do you make the bracha on the tefillin? So so that's what Shmuel says. Misha Tanacha son. So that Shmuel says, what point do you make the bracha on them? From the time that you put them on. After you put them on, you make the bracha. The Gemara says, Ani, is this really the case? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Kol mitzvahs kol mevarchaleim over la'asiyasan. You need to make the blessings before you do them. Before you do the mitzvah, you make the blessing, not after you do the mitzvah. So it means you put them on, but then until the time where you tie them. So generally speaking, what does this mean, tie them? So basically, the simplest way for us to understand this, reading this today, is you put them on, and then when you make them tight, then you that right before you make them tight, you make the bracha. But you should be aware that the Tosfos records a position of the fact that Rabbeinu Eliyahu, Mikana Yemedaktek Rabbeinu Eliyahu, Shetzarach Adam Likshor Tefillin B'chol Yom. That part of the mitzvah putting on the tefillin was you need to actually tie the knot of the tefillin every day. And Rabbeinu Tam argued with that, but Rabbeinu Eliyahu said you have to actually tie the knot every single day, an extra position. And Rabbeinu Tam says no, that you didn't need to do it. And he brought a proof from that which is said in Chulin, Daf Tes. Listen to this. A person needs to learn 3 things in their life. What are the 3 things a person has to know in their life? Stav, you have to know how to be a sofer. Shchita, you have to slaughter an animal properly. Umila, and you need to know how to do circumcision, which I don't know, but I did get Kabbalah for Shlita. Rav Yehuda Amar Av Kesher Shal Tefillin. Rav Yehuda says you also need to know how to tie the tefillin. Uberchatz Chatanim Vitzitzis. Tzitzis is tomorrow's daf. So anyway, well, you still have plenty of time to learn all those things, Harold. The Mila, I didn't want to do it because I felt like when I started to learn how to write Safros, I was already in my mid-40s, and I figure worst comes to worst, a person, when I make a mistake, fine, it's not kosher. But Mila, you make a mistake, it's no fun. So I decided not to do it. Anyway, so Abai and Rav say, so we'll understand the way most understand it, which is it means from the time you put it on until the time you tighten it. That's what the kashira means, even though that's typically not what it means. So Amar Rav Chisda, we're on top of 36a. Dach bein tefillah with tefillah. Let's see, speak between the tefillin. Chozer mevarach. You go back and make the bracha on them. Doesn't that imply dach in that if you spoke, you go back and do it, but lo sach. But if you didn't, you didn't go back and do it. You don't make 2 brachas. That there's 2 separate brachos. So don't we see from here that there's 2 separate brachos? And so therefore, even if you don't speak, you make 2 brachos. So Abai v'Rava, if you don't speak, you make 1 blessing. And I'm interpreting the Gemara the way Rashi reads it, the way Rambam reads it, that if you don't speak, you make 1 bracha. If you speak, you make 2 blessings. And that's the way Sephardim say, that the Sephardim saying they make 1 bracha on the 2 tefillin, but the Ashkenazim follow reading the Gemara, the Rabbeinu Tam says, which you make 2 brachos, one on the shel yad and then the second one on the shel rosh, and that's the way we in our yeshiva follow. Tana sach bein tefillah tefillah. Let's say you speak between the different tefillin. Avera hi. This is considered a tremendous sin. Not a tremendous, considered a sin. The chozer and you have to go back for it from battle. Meaning, say if you're in a battle, you go back from the battle if you committed this sin. So, okay. And what do you mean you go back from battle? Because it says in the pasuk, "Mi ha'isha yarei v'aracho ivav yelech v'yashav." So that's the one who was afraid, weak in his heart, he should go back. And the Chachamim made the exposition in Sota Mem Dawud Amud Aleph that according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, this means what are you afraid? You're afraid that you committed a sin. And so, therefore, this is the type of sin they were talking about, that you spoke while you're putting on your tefillin. Not God forbid, they couldn't even imagine a person who doesn't put on tefillin, that they weren't even talking about. Talking about you put on the tefillin, but you didn't do it right. So then you'd have to leave the battleground. When you put on the tefillin, you first put on the hand tefillin and then the head tefillin. When you remove the tefillin, when you remove them, you first remove the head tefillin and then the hand tefillin. I understand when you put the hand tefillin on and then the head tefillin. But first it says you shall bind it as a sign on your hand. And then it says, and then it says you'll put on them between your eyes, the totafos. So it makes sense. But when he removes them, why does he remove the head and then the hand? No, what's the source? So I'm Rav Huna Asberli. So he says Rabbi Rav Huna explained to me, says they shall be totafos between your eyes. As long as they are between your eyes, yushtayim. As long as they're between your eyes, they need to be two. And that's the concept. All right, we're on bottom of 36A area. You have the Gemara. Perfect. Okay. We need to do a lot of, remind me later, I need to do a lot of ordering. We need to stock up on our Costco stuff, like the apples. We need to get the Hamantash in for that Ira brings, because they don't sell that at Costco. We need what? Yeah. We need to get if you pick it up, I'll reimburse you. We need to get a new Cholent Oreo. We're done with the Cholent. Everything we got to get ready for Purim. We got to get Hamantash. Obviously, everybody's flavor is. Is it? A lot of people like the poppy. A lot of people like the poppy. A lot of the younger generation does not like the poppy. It's a generational divide. I never used to like the poppy, but these guys do a pretty good job. We're going to get a lot of poppies this year. At what point? But the problem with the poppy is if you're going for a drug test, it'll you could test positive for it because of. Oh, okay. There are other problems. You want to make sure the dentist earns his money. The dentist is Jewish. He'll know. At what point do you make the blessing on the tefillin? From the time you put them on. So, okay, so I should have read the Rashi here. Mishas hanachasan. What does it mean from the time you put them on? So Rashi says, Mishas man hanachasan. You can't make the blessing until the time where you're supposed to put them on. What is the time where it is the time where you can't put them on? Well, you have to remember what we said back 5 years ago. We've been doing the daf together for 5 years, Baruch Hashem. When's the earliest time you can put the tefillin on? It says in Brachos Daf Tesam base. By Kriya Shema, we say you can recite Shema when you could see your friend from a distance of 4 amos. By the way, we're doing the daf together for 12 and a half years, but 5.5 years ago is when we did Brachos. By Kriya Shema, you could say the Shema when you could see your friend at a distance of 4 amos, and that's the earliest time in the morning when you can put the tefillin on. But sometimes it's a practical halacha. Sometimes you have a set davening. And it's 6 a.m. davening time, but the earliest time for tefillin is 6:14. What are you going to do? So let's say Kate said, what he would do? Let's say you're going on a journey, and in those days they would wear the tefillin all the time. And you're worried that while you're going on their journey, you didn't have like suitcases, so the tefillin would if you didn't put them on yet, they're going to fall out of your hands and you're going to lose them. So what do? When you put them on, but you can't make the bracha. When the time comes where you could say the tefillin, you move them around, and so that they're on, it's like you put them on, and it's as though you put them on at that time, and then you make the bracha. That's what some people do. If they put on the tefillin too early because they're davening, so they put them on, and then when it comes time to the davening, the bracha, they just go like that and make the bracha. Other people in the minyan don't have that time, and then they get upset that the chazan doesn't wait for them, and then they get into a fight when they're supposed to be praying to Hashem. They end up in a fight. That's what I've seen. Until how long can you leave them on? You're only allowed to leave the tefillin on until sunset. You have to remove them at sunset. That's the first position. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, second position, until people stop walking in the marketplace. That's after it gets dark, after sunset. Until you go to sleep, which is even later. So three positions. Until what point can you leave them on? You can't sleep in them because your body won't be clean when you sleep. But so the three positions. So the first position is until sunset. Then Rabbi Yaakov says until you stop, until people stop walking in the marketplace. And Chacham say until people go to sleep. Chacham agree with Rabbi Yaakov. Shem Cholzan. Now let's say you had to remove them. Let's say Salbeis Akise, or kind of Salbeis Merchatz, to go to the toilet or the bathhouse. V'shakachama, and then the sun set. Shuveinu Chozer Menichon. Then you don't go back and put them on, even according to Rabbi Yaakov. Amar Nachman, Rabbi Yaakov. The law is like Rabbi Yaakov that you have to take them off once people stop walking in the marketplace. Rav Chisda, the Rabbi Rafuna, Matzu Behu Beorta. They daven at night. They used to daven Ma'ariv with them. They daven Ma'ariv like Rabbi Yaakov. Ikad Amri ain't no like Rabbi Yaakov. Some say the law is not like Rabbi Yaakov. And but like the Tanakhama says, immediately when it's sunsets, you have to take them off. More says, but what are you talking about? Didn't they daven with them at night? Well, who pligo? Well, that's exactly Rav Chizim. They argue and they say the law is like Rabbi Yaakov, and not like those who say that the law is not like Rabbi Yaakov, and so therefore they daven with them before after the sunset because they all like Rabbi Yaakov. So Gemara says, that is this really the case that was the practice of Rabbi Bar Avuna that he would pray at night with them, meaning after sunset? Is that really the case? We're not sure if it's darker yet. If the sunset, well, you don't take off the tefillin, you don't put them on. But if it's for sure dark, if it's for sure dark, you have to remove them. And even if they were put on, well, it's still day. And if that's the case, how can we say that Rabbi Rafuna prayed Ma'ariv with them and didn't remove them? So the Gemara says, Hasam Erev Shabbos. That was Friday. And Friday, he would remove them before it got dark because on Erev Shabbos, you have to make sure that you don't wear them on Shabbos. So we're going to say why we don't wear them on Shabbos in a moment. My Kasavar, the Gemara says, what's his position? He Kasavar, Laila's man tefillin. If he's on the position that the time period, the Gemara says, how did he come to this position that you can wear them at night but not on Shabbos? Because the two should be mutually exclusive. Because the derivation for the idea that you don't wear it on both of those occasions is the same verse. So if you hold like one, you should hold it in both areas. But the Gemara says, "My kosaver, what's his position? He kosaver Laila's man tefillin, Shabbos Nami's man tefillin. If he says night is where you wear tefillin, then you should also wear it on Shabbos. And he kosaver Shabbos Laila's man tefillin, Laila Nami Laila's man tefillin. Meaning say night and Shabbos should go together. Either you say you wear them at that time or you don't. The mehechad memate Shabbos may also memate Leilas, because the same source that limits Shabbos also limits night from tefillin. Titania, this is the source. The Shamartas Chukazos. This is the pasuk, the first paragraph in the Torah that commands us about the mitzvah of tefillin. The paragraph which we call Kadesh, that you shall guard this law l'moadah miyamim yamima for its time, from miyamim yamima for days. Yamim v'lo leilos. You wear the tefillin at days and not nights. Miyamim, some of the days will call yamim, but not all the days. Probably Shabbos yamim tovim. This excludes Shabbos and Yontif. Divrei Rabbi Yossi Aglili. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili says you don't wear it at night and you don't wear Shabbos and Yontif. So if you hold like Rabbi Yossi Aglili, you wouldn't wear it. Whereas Rabbi Kiva says, no, it's just teaching us nothing to do with tefillin. It's teaching us about the laws of Pesach, that you have to keep the laws of Pesach for generations. So if he holds like Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he wouldn't wear it at night either. So the Gemara says, no, Nafkoi Me'echad and Nafkoi Rabbi Akiva. No, his source that you wear it at night but not Shabbos, that comes from the same way Rabbi Akiva learned it. Tanya Rabbi Akiva Omer, Yachol Yaniach Adam Tefillin Meshabbasos V'Yom Tov. Rabbi Akiva said, I might think he's supposed to put on Tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Tam Omer V'Yola Osa Yatchal Totefos B'Neinecha. You should put it on as a sign on your hands and a Totefos between your eyes. Misha Tzrichin Os, something that needs a sign. you wear the tefillin. You don't wear it on Shabbos and Yom Tov because they're also called a sign. So that's why you don't wear it on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But the rest of the week you wear it because we need the oath of tefillin. And we also have an oath of a bris, so you need two witnesses. What if a person doesn't have a bris? Because let's say he was a hemophiliac, so he was exempt. So that was a question that was raised. Amar Rabbi Lazar, whoever puts on tefillin after sunset, over Ba'aseh, he violates a positive commandment. Rabbi Yochanan says over Ba'alav, he's in violation of a negative commandment. Let's say this idea whether or not you're violating a positive commandment is a dispute in what Rabbi Yavin said in the name of Rabbi Eli. Amar Rabbi Yavin, Amar Rabbi Eli, Kol Makom Shenemar Yishamar Pen Val, because it says in this verse, Shamarta as a chukah hazos mo'adami amim yimima. So Shamarta, so that's the word here. So whatever it says, Hishamar Pen and Al, these are words, guard, lest, and don't. Enu el losasi. These are negative commandments. So, meaning say not a positive commandment, it's a negative violation. The Mar Islay the Rabbi Abinu, Mar Islay the Rabbi. So one agrees with this statement that the Shamarta is a negative prohibition, and one says no, it's just a positive commandment that you violate. The Mar says no, the Kul Yalma Islahu the Rabbi Abinu. Everybody agrees with this statement that Shamarta. Hold on. It's better to not put tefillin on than to put on at night. Yes, sure. You're violating a commandment. You're either violating a positive commandment or a negative commandment. Hishamar Penval. The Mar Islay the Rabbi Abin. Mar Islay the Gemara says no. Kul Yalma Islay the Rabbi Abin. Everybody agrees with this statement of Rabbi Abin. Everybody agrees with this statement. And Amar Rabbi that Rabbi Abin said in the name of Rabbi Eli. Mar Savar Hishamer the Lav. That one is of the position that Hishamer Mar Savar, Hishamer the Lav, Hishamer the Asay, that when the Torah says Hishamer in a place where it's commanding you not to do something, that's a prohibition, and therefore it looks at the Lav. But the other one is telling us Hishamer in the place where the Torah is commanding you to do something, is looked at as a positive commandment. And here the Torah is commanding you to watch the laws and put on tefillin. And so therefore, even though it says Shamer, it's considered a Lav. Mar Savar, Hishamer the Asay, Nami Lav. And the other says, no, even though it's telling you to do something, it's also considered a prohibition. So they both agree, but they argue about what did Rabbi Eli mean? Amar Rabbi Lazar, but let's say you're putting on the tefillin because otherwise you're worried they're going to get lost. In with Shamran, let's say you're guarding them to make sure that they don't get lost in mutter. That's allowed to. Then you're allowed to do it. Amar Ravina, I remember one time when I was reading Rabbi Eider's book many years ago about laws of tefillin. What about if you're putting them on because you're not bar mitzvah yet and you want to know how to put them on? Let's say your father brings you a pair of tefillin and he wants to teach you how to do it and he's not going to be around the next morning, so he wants to teach you at night. Is that allowed to put on for educational purposes? And there you're not putting them on for a mitzvah, you're just putting on to learn how to do it. So that, and then there's no concern that you're going to fall asleep. So that would, I think he said it was okay under those circumstances, but I have to check that. So the Gemara tells us that Ravina said one time I was sitting in front of, if you're putting on to watch them, it's permitted. So, and Ravina said one time I was sitting in front of Rav Ashi, and it got dark, and he put the tefillin on. And so I said to him, are you putting it on just to watch them? Normally in. And then I realized that he wasn't actually putting them on just to watch them, but rather he felt that you're allowed to put them on at night for the purpose of a mitzvah. So the Gemara says, but Kasavar halacha ve'morkin. He said it was the halacha, but he passed in that way for himself. But he said that that's not the halacha for everybody else. And this person was like being a nunnikdim, so he didn't want to have to explain everything because he wanted to daven. So he said, yeah, I'm just putting him on to watch him, even though he didn't want to go through his whole position about why he felt that really nighttime is a time of tefillin. When you have the tefillin on your head, every time you think about them, you have to touch them. Every time you think about them, you should touch them. You should be focused on the tefillin. We learned this from the tzitz, which is the golden forehead plate that the Kohen Gadol would wear. The tzitz only mentions Hashem's name once. The Torah says it should be on his forehead plate at all times. So that you don't lose concentration from the tzitz. Tefillin sheish Bayan Askaros, tefillin, which has many mentions of the tefillin, alachas kama v'kama. For sure, you have to mention Hashem's. For sure, you have to think about it all the time. Tan Rabbanan, it says about the tefillin yadcha that it should be a sign on your hand. Zu small, meaning you're supposed to put the tefillin on your left hand. Now, Talmer small ain't all you mean. How do we know yadcha is your left hand, not your right hand? Talmer af yadi yasta eretz vimini tipcha shemaim. So we see that it mentions right, but first mentions hand. So the yad by itself means the left. Then Gemara is going to say three psukim. Omer yadal yatid tishlach vimino al musa melim. That's a reference to when Yael stuck the peg in Sisera's head. And a third pasuk, Omer lama tashiv yatcha viminecha mikerach kalei. So that's a third pasuk where we see this concept. So Rabbi Yosia Chorem Omer Matzina Yamin Shenikra Yad. We know that the right hand is called Yad. Shenemar Vayar Yosef Ki Hashis Aviv Yad Yamino. We saw that Yosef saw that he put his right hand on the head of Ephraim. V'idach Yamino Ikra Yad Stamach Ikra. Yeah, it's called Yad Yamino. It's called the right hand, but regular Yad is not called that. I think we're going to go more of a discussion on this, and then we're going to get into the mitzvah of tzitzis, Baruch Hashem, and moving right along with this beautiful parak of Akol Mitraba, which has very little now to do with Menachos. Okay, we'll stop here, Baruch Hashem.